And there, they make their own rules. Our next guest knows firsthand simply that. He's been to those no-go zones. Joining us now is Nolan Peterson, a journalist and veteran, knowing the area quite well. Sir, we thank you for your service first.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us early this morning. Can you explain the no-go zone to everybody out there, all of our viewers who are waking up?
Right, there are 741 no-go zones throughout France, and they're located in these ghettos that have formed around the major cities called les banlieues. Excuse my French. But they are basically neighborhoods where French Muslims have coalesced because they can't find housing or economic opportunities within the major French cities. And actually, about 40% of France's 5 million Muslims live outside of Paris in the ghettos.
So you spent some time there. What did you see?
Well, it was pretty scary. And I've been to Afghanistan, Iraq, and Kashmir, India, and at times it felt like that, those places in the banlieue, in these no-go zones. You see young men wearing Osama bin Laden t-shirts in a hookah shop. I saw a speech by Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, who was leading an insurgency against American troops in Iraq at the time. And it seemed very mainstream and very accepted. This is the efforts of Islamists like the Muslim Brotherhood or Al-Qaeda to recruit off the streets of the no-go zones is not something that's hidden in the shadows. It's actually very open and it's accepted, and people just sort of go along and let this be the status quo.
Well, to your point there, I mean, maybe you won't find this surprising, but in a new poll, it showed that 16% of French people had a favorable view of ISIS. And among those aged 18 to 24, 27% had a favorable view of ISIS. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it's shocking, and it's scary that 16% of the French population would support a group who's made their brand with beheading U.S. journalists, massacres, and rape. But I think those numbers reflect the fact that about 10 to 12% of France's population are Muslim, and that group is very ostracized from mainstream French society. Among European French who have graduated from college, the unemployment rate is 5%. Among college graduates in France who are North African descent, the unemployment rate is 27%.
Wow.
And go ahead.
You know, so when you hear about this marginalization, right, and you're thinking yesterday and this week, the horrific events with the terror takeover, dual hostage situation, in your mind, with your great experience, both in military, in writing, in travel, in intel, what needs to be done to fix this?
There's no easy solution, and I think the unfortunate answer is that it's going to take a top-to-bottom shakedown of French society and culture. The French are very protective of their cultural heritage, and there is a reluctance for them to integrate the 5 million Muslims in the mainstream society, but they're going to have to do it. And I think a good point that I've tried to reiterate is that the divisions in France between the Muslims and the European French don't cause the violence, but they do leave the Muslims very susceptible to be recruited into Islamist groups.
Would you, quickly before we go, would you go as far as saying no-go zones should be a no?
Oh, they should definitely not allow those to exist. We didn't allow Afghanistan to exist as a no-go zone of Islamic recruitment or Islamist recruitment after 9/11. And that's essentially what what the French are letting happen in their own country, are places where Islamists can freely recruit without any danger of prosecution young, disaffected Muslims into their ranks, and then they send them off to Syria and Iraq to fight.
Wow. Well, you, as a former special operations pilot and combat veteran, Iraq and Afghanistan, we thank you for your service, for your insight today. Nolan Peterson. We'll talk to you soon.